You wake up and your whole body aches. Your throat is closing. There is no pharmacy down the street, no doctor's office, no number to call. For most of human history, this was simply what illness looked like. For roughly 300 season years, your ancestors got sick the same way you do now, but they had none of the tools you take for granted. No antibiotics, no painkillers, no hospitals, just each other. So what did they actually do? The easy assumption is that ancient humans just died. Fast, brutal, no second chances. But the archaeological record tells a very different story. It tells a story of care. In 1957, an archaeologist named Ralph Solecki was excavating Shanidar Cave in northern Iraq when his team uncovered the skeleton of a Neanderthal man, now known as Shanidar I. He had lived to around 40 or 50 years old, which was already remarkable for the time. But his bones told a harder story. His right arm had been amputated below the elbow, likely decades before he died. He was partially blind. He showed signs of a withered leg and hearing loss. A man like that could not hunt. He could not gather food efficiently. He could not defend himself. By the logic of pure survival of the fittest, he should have died young. He didn't. Someone fed him. Someone protected him. Someone let him stay close to the group for years, maybe decades, after he stopped being able to contribute in the way we usually imagine mattered. Shanidar I is one of the earliest pieces of hard evidence that ancient humans didn't just survive illness and injury alone. They survived it together. But care is only half the story. The other half is medicine, and it's older than most people assume. In 2012, researcher Karen Hardy and her team examined the dental calculus, the hardened plaque, on the teeth of Neanderthal remains from El Cedron Cave in Spain. Dental calculus traps tiny particles of whatever a person ate or breathed in over their lifetime, sealing it like a microscopic time capsule. What they found inside one individual's teeth was starch grains from cooked plants and traces of chamomile and yarrow, two plants with no real nutritional value, but a long history of use as natural anti-inflammatories and appetite stimulants. This Neanderthal was sick. His dental record shows an abscess and signs of chronic illness, and he appears to have been eating bitter medicinal plants that would have tasted terrible and offered no calories, for one apparent reason. They made him feel better. Think about that for a moment. This wasn't a modern human with a written pharmacology textbook. This was a Neanderthal, tens of thousands of years before agriculture, before writing, before anything we'd call civilization, and he was self-medicating with the same basic plant compounds still found in some anti-inflammatory drugs today. How did he know? Trial and error passed down. Someone at some point ate a bitter yarrow leaf while in pain and noticed the pain eased. They told someone else. That someone told their children. Multiply that process across thousands of generations, and you get something remarkably close to an oral pharmacy, encoded not in books but in memory and imitation. This pattern shows up again and again once you know where to look. In 1991, hikers discovered the naturally mummified body of a man in the Ötztal Alps, later nicknamed Ötzi, who died around 3,300 BCE. Preserved in the ice for over 5,000 years, Ötzi was found carrying two different species of polypore fungus on a leather cord. One of them, birch polypore, has documented antiparasitic and antimicrobial properties. Researchers later found that Ötzi was infected with whipworm, a parasite that causes exactly the kind of abdominal pain that fungus might have been meant to treat. A man, alone in the mountains, 5,000 years ago, was carrying his own medicine kit. So let's reconstruct what this actually looked like day to day, because the studies alone don't capture the texture of it. Picture a small band, maybe 20 or 30 people, moving together across a landscape they know intimately. Someone develops a fever. It isn't treated as a private problem to be managed alone in a bedroom. It's a group event. The people who know the local plants, often older women who have spent decades learning which leaves ease pain and which berries are dangerous, are brought in immediately. Someone stays near the sick person through the night. Food, what little there is, gets redirected toward them, not away. This wasn't sentimentality. It was strategy. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent years studying the Juhansi people of the Kalahari Desert and documented an elaborate system of reciprocal gift-giving called Hexaro, which functioned partly as a survival insurance policy. You cared for others when they were vulnerable, because the entire structure of your survival depended on the certainty that they, or someone in the network, would do the same for you one day. Illness wasn't a threat to be quarantined away from the group. It was a moment that activated the group's deepest obligations to each other. And here is the counterintuitive twist. We tend to imagine that ancient life got safer as it got more advanced. That once humans settled down, farmed, and built permanent villages, health improved. The archaeological evidence says the opposite happened, at least at first. Skeletal studies of early agricultural populations consistently show more disease, more malnutrition, and shorter average lifespans than many hunter-gatherer populations that came before them. Denser populations living near livestock and stored grain created ideal conditions for new infectious diseases to spread. The very thing that let humans stockpile more food also let them stockpile more illness. So the shift wasn't a simple story of medicine improving over time. In some ways, the intimate, plant-based, community-centered care of small mobile groups was more effective, relative to the risks they actually faced, than what came right after it. None of this means ancient life was easy. Infant mortality was brutally high. A broken leg could still be a death sentence. There was no surgery for internal injuries, no vaccines, no antibiotics for a wound that turned septic. But within those limits, your ancestors were not helpless. They built something out of two resources that cost nothing and required no technology: attention and memory. They watched what worked. They remembered it. They passed it on. And they refused to let the sick be forgotten. Even when keeping them alive offered no immediate benefit to anyone else, that instinct didn't disappear. It's still in you. It's why you check on a sick friend even when there's nothing useful you can actually do. It's why isolation feels worse than the illness itself. It's why even now, with all your pharmacies and hospitals, being cared for by someone who simply stays in the room still changes how sickness feels. You wake up and your whole body aches. Your throat is closing. But this time, someone is sitting beside you. That, too, is 300,000 years old.